No.
Oh my
Hey, bad movie fans, and welcome back to another episode of Five Good Things, where we take a horrible movie and just try and find the positives, the glimmers of hope, because no bad thing can truly be awful. So we try and find five good things about the worst movies. And with Uncharted coming out this week, we thought now's a good time to look back at the long legacy that is bad video game movie adaptations. We originally were doing Super Mario Brothers, but we couldn't find it anywhere. So we settled on the other famously bad one, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's Doom, because we are masochists. But believe it or not, we did find five good things about this movie. And I don't know about you, Josh. I found five on the dot, and that was it.
I found four and then had to really reach for five. But gosh, dude, I especially with like one coming out in in 2020, I forgot about this movie, and I forgot how I'm gonna get my negatives out of the way real quick here. I forgot how bad this movie is, and not only that, but like, hey, you know what? Let's have a discussion about, hey, you want to make a video game about a very violent video game? Yeah, hey, that sounds like a great idea. Do you want to I don't know, make it incredibly boring so the first 30, 45 minutes is them walking around in the dark and nothing happening? Yeah, that sounds exactly right.
Empty rooms.
Oh my gosh, it was that was rough. But yeah, there's five good things and let's get into it, man.
What's your number five? What's your stretch there?
My stretch is that for the early 2000s, honestly, up until that terrible blood spurt at the end, the CGI is not awful. It's not great, especially for the early 2000s cringe, but it passes. I mean, it holds up reasonably well. I mean, it probably helps that it's pretty dark, like dark lighting the entire movie, but yeah.
Yeah, I had some issues with this movie from a visual perspective of I watched it during the day, which apparently was a bad idea because I had my TV cranked all the way up on the brightness and I still could only see very little. It's not Alien vs. Predator Requiem bad, but I had a very hard time seeing a lot in this. It's not... Actually, I could have a sixth item here. When we are actually allowed to see whatever's attacking, it's pretty good makeup and prosthetics. They don't let us see it very often, but it looks cool, and I will applaud a department in movie making that doesn't often get the recognition it deserves with
correct
makeup and practical effects, and the fact that they went with practical effects as much as they did in the few times that we do actually see monsters in this. I will tip my hat for that. So, my number five, if I can remember where I put the picture. Oh, well, I'll just start talking about it and it'll come back to me randomly. But again, I can't think of a lot of good stuff about this movie. So my number five is also kind of a stretch like Josh's. And there's a character called The Kid. They give no other characteristics to him other than The Kid. The Kid is not an interesting character. With a name like The Kid, they can't be bothered to give him a name. But what I like is the end of the movie, towards the tail end of the movie, he does have a crisis of faith, and I think that conflict is an interesting element to bring into this story of, oh, you're so ready to go into action, and then you see the stuff that's being asked of you from really corrupt higher ups. Literally corrupted, because there might be something already in their system, which is a whole stupid other argument. But I'm going, okay, this movie's dumb. At least you're trying to give your character some moral dilemma that they must struggle with.
Well, and to your credit, The Kid is the only character that goes from one end of the spectrum to the other, of being so stressed out that he asked out asks, what's his name, Portland, the super creepy
Portman.
guy,
Portman.
Portman, for like, hey man, like you got anything to steady my nerves? Like, first time out, blah blah blah. I'm like, okay, this kid's obviously gonna die next. But yeah, and then has that complete change of faith in that, like, hey, like, there's a group of 20 people and like they're unharmed, they're not infected. Like, what do we do? And Sarge just like, kill them. Obviously, I told you to clear the sector. It's like, okay.
That being said, the kid is still dumb. Hey, I'm nervous. Let me get high in the middle of this mission. And I'm going,
Yeah.
you do realize you're gonna die. Like, are you kidding me? How can you be that stupid?
Dude. And while we're talking about characters, before we move on to our number fours, one of the problems I had, one of the most confusing things I had for me was with Portman. He's kind of a sleazeball the whole movie. That's fine, whatever. It kind of like definitely when I saw his character, I was like, oh yeah, this is an early 2000s movie. You've got to have somebody who disrespects women. Got it, K, heard. But then like when he calls for help, and they kind of make it seem like that's a bad thing.
Yeah, I was like, he's doing a smart thing. You do need backup.
Yeah, like you literally need backup. Why are you still making him seem like a sleazeball in that? But it's whatever. It's water under the bridge.
Yeah. So my number 4 is honestly the only person I thought tried in this movie. I'm not saying they're great, but at least tried, and that's The Rock. I will call him The Rock and not Dwayne Johnson because I think there's a clear career differentiation. Like the early Rock days, Scorpion King, The Game Plan, whereas Dwayne Johnson is like Baller, San Andreas, Jumanji, of like more aware of his brand as opposed to I'm still kind of piggybacking off of my WWF success era. I went into this going, I love me some Karl Urban. Karl Urban is going to be one of the best things about this because Karl Urban is like the best thing in everything he's in. Oh my God, Karl Urban knew exactly what kind of movie he was in. And he puts in the minimum amount of effort possible. Same with Rosamund Pike, who is great in a lot of other stuff. She's great in Gone Girl. She also gives no craps about this movie, and the two of them just cannot for the life of them hide their accents at all. But on the flip side, The Rock is, I think, like aware of the material, and maybe he's just that naturally charismatic that I'm going,
yeah,
okay, you're still a scummy person, but if I have to spend time with any character, it's probably you, just because your dialogue doesn't just sound incredibly stilted. You are at least trying here.
Yeah, that's fair.
Your dialogue is not great, but you have been written. Your lines have been written for you by Vince McMahon over your career, so you've had much worse to say. Rudy Tooty. Yeah.
And I mean, at least he almost goes full Scorpion King there at the end, but thankfully they do not. My number 4 is the only real nod to the actual video game this movie is based on, and that's that FPS scene where we get the first person view from Karl Urban's character, and where he's going around. Now, I say that, but like it's not exactly the best perspective. I feel like you miss a lot, and they kind of how do I say this? They do themselves a lot of favors by hiding cuts in there, and then
they don't hide those cuts. I was about to say the exact same thing with first person in a first person shooter, or even in a first person perspective. You don't get cuts in real life, so if it's supposed to be from your perspective, the scene shouldn't just morph into another scene randomly. I'm going, I get what you're going for here.
Yeah.
But why are there cuts in this scene that should be a long tracking shot? That being said, it's super, super cool. I'll talk about it later, but...
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't just notice that, too. It's a cool scene that could have been perfect had they not tried to do these weird cuts and think we wouldn't notice. I'm going, we're in a completely separate location now.
Oh, I mean, like, if it hadn't been for, like, some of the ways that the bad guys, whatever they are are coming in, because they're not demons, because at no point do they talk about how like, oh, this is like, all this infection is coming from hell or anything. Like, no, that's not what this is.
The
This
hell
is
is
alien
the
disease.
hell is symbolic. It's a symbolic hell.
Yeah. Everyone's got like really bad genes, like anyway, but like it the only thing that took outside of the cuts that took me out of the FPS scene is that every bad guy is set up like a bad haunted house scare. Like, oh, we're here. Yeah, boom. Oh, we're here. Got him. Yeah. I was like, oh, dude, this is not good. Not good at all.
No, was that your number 4 or your number 3?
That's number 4, definitely.
Okay, then what is your number 3 then?
The opening music to when they're like the whole process of them going into the Ark and going to Mars. There's a track underneath all of that, and it's incredibly similar to like the OG Doom game soundtracks, and I personally really enjoyed it. It unfortunately doesn't stick around most of the movie.
There's a couple times that the music really hits. There's a couple times that the music I was just
absolutely.
like, oh, that sounds like Mick Gordon's stuff from Doom. Granted, I don't know if he did the originals, but I know Mick Gordon did the, what was it, 2016 Doom?
No. So yeah, what's so interesting is like and this is just nerd stuff, and I don't know why I know this, but I know this. When Mick Gordon was hired to do the music for 2016 Doom, he was literally told no guitars ever, period. So he had to like create a computer instrument that would like make all these sounds. Anyway, it's super cool, but like, yeah, it's there's a lot of the music that harkens back to it, and unfortunately is too soft in the background. Most of the music is too soft in the background in this movie.
Completely agree.
For no real reason. No real reason. Like, it's not even in like the real quiet, like the like, oh, we're waiting scenes. Like, it's just soft in the background. It's just weird. But soundtrack is definitely up there. It's pretty cool.
So my number 3 is something that I think is either the only thing that's actual subtlety and genius in this movie, or more than likely a complete accident of one of the greatest uses of foreshadowing I've ever seen, to the point of it had to have been an accident because they're not that smart for this movie. So it's at the very, very beginning.
I think I know what you're talking about.
They're getting everyone ready together. They're getting the whole crew together, and Karl Urban didn't know if he was coming on the mission or not. And then The Rock's talking to him, and it cuts to Karl Urban's face as he's loading up. And it's like, sometimes you just got to face your demons. Then we cut back to The Rock with the red emergency light on his face, giving you the impression that he's a demon. I'm going, I knew that The Rock, spoiler alert, was turning heel and becoming the secret villain at the end of this. I'm going, holy crap. For the people that have seen this movie, I don't recommend rewatching it.
No.
But if you know ahead of time that The Rock is turning villain, that basically gives away the ending right there, in one of the best bits of foreshadowing I've ever seen. Because it's totally intentional that when he says face your demons, the line is on Karl Urban, and then the very next shot is The Rock with the emergency light on his face switching. I'm going, that's an intentional choice. It has to be. That's really smart. Granted, that could have been a total accident, but I'm going, whoa.
I don't know about you, because I also, that's why, and this is why it's my number 2. But it literally, like, that specific, I was like, I audibly went, oh, ooh, that was cool. I like that a lot. Like, too bad the rest of this movie is going to be absolute hot garbage. But like, all right, we're here. Okay.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, did we just trip into something great? Like, did you accidentally or intentionally do that? Because either way, bravo, good job, proper use of foreshadowing. That's so subtle that if you haven't seen the movie before, you're gonna miss that. But if you are a poor unfortunate soul like Little Mermaid and you have to rewatch this movie, you're gonna catch that. And it's a great detail in the movie that doesn't know what subtlety is. So that was Josh's number 2. My number 2 is, we talked earlier about how great the prosthetics looked and the makeup work that went into practical effects, and that's a department that often doesn't get talked about. Another department that doesn't get talked about enough that I thought was the real MVP of this entire movie was the sound design. Not specifically like the music or whatever else. The music is fine, but like Josh said earlier, not played up loud enough. But the sound design itself is really excellent, whether it's the creaking rattling of the ship that they're on, kind of giving it a life of its own no matter where you're at. It went a long way in creating an ambiance and an atmosphere that this movie is not scary, but the sound design is really trying its darndest to make it scary while never overdoing it. The music is good when it needs to be, but like Josh said, it's never strong enough in a lot of points. But I think the sound design, whether it's the weapons, when the BFG goes off, I think that sounds really
Super
awesome.
cool.
That's a unique sound. But just the sound design of the creaking steps, just the ship noise, along with everything else involved with it, did a good job of, from a sound point, I understood where I was and I felt immersed in the world. Granted, it was a boring as heck world, but the sound design itself went above and beyond what it was required to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even like the weird creature stuff too, because when the priest guy comes back to life and is smacking his head on the window, and you hear the crunch of bones and all that stuff, I was like, oh, okay, like that's rough. That kind of hits me. And then of course later Sam's like, oh, that's because he knew he was turning. I was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah. I don't remember half the people's names in this, but whatever.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
So then, Josh, what's the best thing about Doom 2005?
So, we're in the 2000s. It's the time of the WWF, the Attitude Era. Bro, if you want some top tier trash early 2000s fight scenes, this is your movie. It is like the I don't want to call it good, but like the final fight, while I do feel it kind of goes on just a little bit too long, it's enjoyable. It does on a certain level feel like we were building to this, but between Reaper and Sarge, like it does feel like this is who Sarge was this whole time, and they do a decent job of being like, yo, like Reaper is, while he is, a sniper and he does kill people, he's still good at heart. And there's a difference between a soldier who has good intentions and a soldier who is just here to carry out orders and whatever those orders mean. So I like the trash like fighting, early 2000s fighting in this movie, but it's enjoyable, and it's probably the best thing this movie has going for it when it actually happens, because gosh, this movie is boring.
Yeah, when we get to that final fight, I was expecting more of the frenetic editing like we've been getting through the entire movie, but
yeah,
it's still not the best editing. But there's actually some pretty solid hand-to-hand choreography in this, when it's actually clearly The Rock versus clearly Carl Urban. Like, and I don't know what happened, but they're shooting it in a wide enough angle that you can clearly see the actors doing the stunts, and they're not cutting away every half second. They're still cutting it too much for my preferences for an action movie, but for the time in the era of the rise of the Jason Bourne style action movies, where it's a monkey holding the camera basically, this could have been a whole lot worse. And I think the choreography is pretty solid in a movie that doesn't have a lot of choreography, period. The choreography for this was surprisingly decent. Now, my number one, Josh already talked about it, but I really love that first person shooter scene a lot. Granted, it felt weird of all of a sudden, like, it felt like they wanted to do it, but didn't know how to transition into it or out of it very well, because all of a sudden, Carl Urban gets knocked out. When he wakes up, you're Carl Urban, with weird cuts and whatnot. But it's the closest any movie has ever come to replicating the feel of a game. Now, that might not always be the best thing, because they're clearly two different mediums, and you don't need to hardcore Henry this and be first person the whole time. But for a limited segment, I actually felt something. I actually felt fun while watching this. It's not great, but it's that vibe of the Doom games of not the best, but it's a lot of fun, just violent fun. That could have been more violent during that particular moment. It also could have been better if it was actually demons from another world, but for what they're going for, it was the only scene that actually felt creative and fun and different, that they felt like they were actually trying something, at least trying to pay homage to the game. I didn't grow up playing Doom, but that felt a lot closer to me to Doom than the rest of the movie. It's not spectacular, but it was at least a lot of fun, which is more than we can say for a good chunk of this movie.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what's very interesting too is, and you can see it in the pictures, that's the most light we've had the entire movie.
Which is
And I think
weird.
that's part of, that's part of the reasons why I think this scene also stands out so much, is because all of a sudden the blues that we've been looking at all the whole film, a whole hour and a half, is all of a sudden replaced by these bright, like really intimidating oranges, and it just adds this to it, the aesthetic. It definitely takes you off balance. The thing that, and because it is like such a jarring color difference, that's the only reason I couldn't give it like a higher spot, just because it was like, it is so jarring because he gets knocked out and now all of a sudden he is like, hi, yes, we're Carl Urban now, this is us, hi, hello,
And there's no transition out of it. All of a sudden you go from first person to just following Carl Urban.
Like you're just kind of like come out of his head, like and all of a sudden you're on his on like a third on his shoulder, which like I did kind of like, in the sense that I'm playing Spider-Man right now, and that is exactly how you go into cutscenes. Basically, is like all of a sudden you're from out here, you're on the shoulder or whatever. So it kind of works, but it's just, God, dude, like this. Five Good Things. Obviously, we found some good stuff, but this movie is so stinking boring.
It is so boring.
I paused it a couple times because I was so bored. Like, how do you take a movie based on an incredibly violent video game and make it just an absolute snooze fest?
You do it by not putting any aliens in the actual rooms that you're trying to find. Well, that'll wrap us up for another 5 Good Things. What should we do next time we do a 5 Good Things? You want us to do another superhero movie, another video game movie? Let us know. We like doing 5 Good Things when we hate doing 5 Good Things. It's a love-hate relationship in the finest sense, but we do it all for you because it's a lot of fun. But have you seen Doom? If you have, let us know your thoughts. Was it one of the worst movies that you ever saw? Do you consider it a guilty pleasure? Whatever your thoughts on Doom, for better or for worse, let us know. We always like hearing your comments. And as always, if you like what you see, subscribe to the Uncharted Media channel. Help us get to 700 subscribers. That's our goal for the end of the year. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals.